Morning, or should I say good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to the people that are not in this time zone. I'd like to welcome you. First, let me start by apologizing for the bit of a technical hitch we had in trying to get Professor Adiwopo on. My name is Tunde Laoye, Ola Tunde Laoye. I'm the host and I'm the managing partner of LNA Legal Consultants. As you're aware, I have two bosses, so I'm just like the boy here. There's Professor Adiwopo, who is the principal partner, and there's Professor Yemi Lawal Orowolo, who is a head of research, partner and head of research. So this is really her game, but today she will be here as a participant, or sorry, as a panelist. I don't know if Prof is set up yet, but I will once again say welcome to everyone that has joined. I've had a lot of calls from people trying to understand the correlation between traditional medicine, health, environment, and IP. And they've been asking me, I mean, these are not people, these are not lawyers, and these are not medical practitioners, just generally wondering how it is intertwined. And I guess for those that are curious, I hope they're on today and they will get a lot of knowledge. And because what we have, the capacity of the panelists we have today is amazing, and I'm sure we'll all learn a lot from what they have to contribute. While I'm still waiting for Prof, who's the moderator, sorry, we have two Profs, so Professor Adiwopo, who's the moderator, to settle down, I will just give a quick rundown of the participants, sorry, the panelists we have here today. We have with us, representing, would I say, government side of things, Ibikunle Adeola Jegede is the head planning, monitoring and evaluation, National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development in Abuja. We also have with us, we have with us Dr. Olalekan Moyosori Lalude. I hope I pronounced that right. He's a lawyer, academic researcher, certified public policy analyst with the London School of Economics and Political Science. He's presently in Wisconsin International University College, Ghana. We also have, from the medical side, Dr. Oluwatomi Kogo. She's the managing director, Iwoson Lagoon Wellness Center. Welcome, Madam. Sorry, I know we pulled you out of another seminar. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Good morning. Thank you very much.
Okay. Also with us is Titilayo Edet, who is an education and healthy living consultant. So she would definitely be giving us a lot of the traditional medicine discuss. And all the way from the UK, we have Jade Kulatakis. This is the second time Jade has joined us on one of our webinar series. Thank you for coming again. She's a lecturer and lead intellectual property law in Aberdeen University in UK. I hope I have touched on everyone. But very last, who I've already mentioned, is Professor Yemi Lawal Orowolo, who is basically the person behind all of this, but she would also be sitting in as a panelist. Prof, are you ready to join us?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you a bit.
Just a bit.
Anyway, today, Professor Adiwopo will be the moderator. Professor Adiwopo is a professor of intellectual property and is the principal partner of LNA, and is a senior advocate of Nigeria.
Is it better now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
So
Okay. In that case,
we can get started.
Okay. All right then. May I?
Yes, you may, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lawi, the managing partner of LNA Legal Consultant.
Still a bit faint, sir.
He has done part of my job for me. So without much ado, I will just once again, on behalf of LNA Legal Consultant, welcome you all to this webinar. But please permit me very quickly because of time, to make a few introductory remarks to set the tone into the theme of today, which as we all know, traditional medicine, health, environment, intellectual property, good as medicine. And let me once again, repeat what Mr. Larry has said. Professor Yemi Awolo is the force behind this webinar, and she's acknowledged as such. I believe as Africans, we all identify with our cultural heritage because that is what makes us unique. This identity is the heartbeat of what we refer to as traditional knowledge, which consists of practices, know-how, method, systems of indigenous communities that have developed and have been passed on from generation to generation. Traditional knowledge, and in particular, traditional medicine knowledge, is a topical subject. And for the most part, it has emerged into a sub-disciplinary field of its own. Yet, from all indications, it does not appear that the subject has been explored or interrogated enough. What has made it even more topical is the tension that has evolved between traditional knowledge and Western knowledge system, or better still, intellectual property, properly so called. As a result, traditional knowledge and TK debate as we know it today has not ceased to generate considerable level of controversy. And this is not only among lawyers and scholars, as Mr. Laoye said, as we shall see in this webinar, but also among diverse range of professionals and thought leaders like our panelists today, which include scientists, creatives, policymakers, development experts, even economists, among others. The emergence of traditional knowledge as an organic body of knowledge with ancient origin has raised important questions. These questions have continued to challenge existing norms, not only in the interface with classical IP theories, but also in the wider social, cultural, environmental, and development implications, which in large part have sought to preserve the integrity of traditional knowledge and prevent it from any form of misappropriation. By some accounts, over 40% of pharmaceutical products draw from traditional knowledge, indicating that scientists have built off traditional knowledge for some of the breakthroughs in medical science. It is therefore ironic that a system of knowledge with a long history of contribution to the advancement of modern science can only be confined to its fringes and for what has been generally regarded as unproven therapies, where scientific and evidence-based research has proved otherwise. In recent times, even outside indigenous communities, the changing narrative is evident. And more recently, the recognition of traditional medicine coming from no other source than the British Royal Palace is significant. In many jurisdictions, degrees in traditional and alternative medicine in various areas are already being offered, marking its entry into the mainstream healthcare system. From global perspective, leading international organizations like WHO, WIPO, UNEP, UNESCO, UNCTAD, UNDP, even including World Bank, they have all engaged the subject of traditional medicine and traditional knowledge from their perspective or views. Despite the efficacy and safety, several questions have arisen, for example, relating to the adoption and integration of traditional medicine into modern healthcare system, protecting the rights that is in traditional knowledge itself, preserving biodiversity and securing the environment, leveraging rapid advances in digital technologies and advanced research for health and well-being of the people. Also, issues surrounding ownership, creation, and protection of traditional knowledge, with the divergences with legal and cultural system, or as they affect IP, are by far important questions that have dominated the discussions about traditional medicine and IP. Other important questions include, for example, what is the place of traditional medicine in medical studies, in medical practice, and protocols? And to what extent has it been integrated legally and officially? And how should it be integrated? These are many more questions that will be addressed by our panel of experts in this webinar. LA has assembled a team of experts to help us explore the different dimensions of traditional medicine and contribute to the ongoing traditional knowledge debate in this country. To do this, we have 6 experts who have been introduced by the managing partner, and they have been drawn from a range of specializations, including TK systems and IP law, medicine, pharmacy, traditional medicine, environment, and wellness industry. Each of our speakers will address specific issues and speak up to 15 minutes. And then we'll take questions and comments before we close. Standard webinar practice applies. We mute our audio throughout the discourse. After the presentations, participants may wish to indicate by show of hand if they have any questions or comments. So we shall now proceed with the first speaker to set the tone for the presentations. And our first speaker will be Mr. Ibikunle Adeola Jegede. He'll be followed by Dr. Oluwatomi Togo, and then Ms. Titilayo Edits. By way of introduction, Mr. Jegede is the head planning, monitoring, and evaluation, National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development. He has over 25 years working experience as a research scientist with over 35 scientific and conference publications on traditional medicine and related subjects. Among several of his engagements in traditional medicine, he was a project manager and traditional medicine national survey coordinator of the World Bank supported research project on the development of anti-diabetic phytomedicine from Nigerian medicinal plants 2019 to 2012. Member of the Technical Working Group for the Development of the National Health Research Policy and Priorities 2014, and the current edition 2024, among others in his profile. He's currently coordinating a series of state-level interventions aimed at capacity development projects for the promotion of traditional medicine in partnership with the federal government. Without much ado, I would like to invite Mr. Jegede to take the floor for 15 minutes and set the tone by speaking on the topic, traditional medicine in Nigeria, past, present, and future perspective. Mr. Jegede, over to you.
Thank you very much, Moderator Professor Adewapo, for the introduction and for the opportunity to speak. I hope everyone can hear me, please.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So I have 15 minutes. I will try and do justice to that. So I'll be talking on traditional medicine in Nigeria, the past, the present, and future perspective. The past of traditional medicine in Nigeria, the present, the future, then I'll briefly conclude. So as a form of introduction, what is the definition of traditional medicine? Again, we go back to WHO standard definition. Some total of knowledge, skills, practices, set of theories, beliefs, experiences of indigenous different cultures, whether it's explicable or not, that has been used in maintaining our health and has been used in preventing, diagnosis and improvement or the treatment of physical and mental illness. Very apt, the word mental illness. Why are we still talking about traditional medicine in this century? The very important occurrence of COVID-19 pandemic brought the world to its knees. And there were some countries that were able to quickly harness their traditional medicine history, products, and practices to support the healthcare of their countries. For example, China was the leading one. before the whole world got to know what was happening, it had deployed its array of products as infusions, as tea, as tablets, in trying to manage the disease. One of the other countries, Madagascar, came up with what they call the herbal product, which he wanted the whole world to adopt. It looked within itself also to see how. So that pandemic brought to the fore the need for countries to look at their medicine security. How safe are you in case there's another pandemic? Also, there are global, regional, and national gross domestic product issues. Some countries are making money from the expansion and the growth of their herbal market or their traditional medicine. The key important aspect of why traditional medicine is still relevant is the issue of integration into national healthcare system. It's an ongoing debate at different fora, WHO, UNICEF, World Bank. How can we effectively integrate traditional medicine? Some countries have done it well, whether you call them close countries or not, and they are benefiting from it. The primary healthcare system strengthening is one of the main issues where traditional medicine must still be at the forefront of the various debates. Healthcare coverage is also an issue. How much of our traditional medicine can be incorporated into national healthcare coverage system? We are all talking about universal health coverage by 2030. Is Nigeria on the path to achieving universal health coverage by 2030? What is the role of traditional medicine? The job creation and poverty alleviation, it's a world business, it's a regional business. How well is Nigeria fit into it? There, of course, national pride. Madagascar made that very clear to us. So this was one of the products that came out of the research in NIPID during the COVID-19. There was a product from Madagascar that was called the COVID Organics. And the then Secretary of Government of Federation, Boss Mustafa, publicly announced that Nigeria was going to procure large volume of that product. And then when NIPID came back and did its own research, he realized that the plant, which is the main component of that product, was already grown in Nigeria. So we had to do a study to find out, is there any comparison with what they want to sell to us or sell to the whole world? And we found out from our findings that the COVID Organics contained Artemisia annua, which was also available in the country. Domestication widespread. So along with various studies carried out, we showed that there's capacity and technical know-how for Nigeria itself to have developed its own phytomedicine, along with various other products that are available in the country. But between then and now, I am not sure that Nigeria can beat itself and say this based on that effort. So NAPI was involved in government actually on its way forward. So the global trade in herbal medicine is huge. It's huge. By 2022, it was determined by the global herbal medicine market was the highest compared to food, beverage, or even personal healthcare products. The research and market also did the forecast that by 2028, it will be up to $279.8 billion business. Nigeria needs to put its act together and so it can benefit from it. So in terms of the Nigerian market, it's like a $200 billion industry, and Nigeria is blessed with over 10,000 species of medicinal plants, with a large span of land that we can use to cultivate and make our youth to work. So less than 20% of these plants have been fully utilized in herbal medicine business. So harnessing the power of herbal medicine would not only contribute to Nigeria's economy, but promote health and well-being of its citizens, according to Euromonitor International that gave the statistics. So types of and practice of traditional medicine: bone setters, aromatherapies, massagers, herbalists, traditional birth attendants, which is widespread across various parts of the country that are well developed in Lagos State, for example. They have a well-organized traditional birth attendant system that has been proposed to even be involved in improving immunization coverage of some of the various health interventions in the country. Then there are also psychiatrists, they are spiritualists. So it's a wide range of expertise when you talk of traditional medicine in the country. So in the past, how was it before the 1960s? What was the landscape of traditional medicine in Nigeria? It was a secret business, a lot of spiritism, a lot of divination. There was lack of scientific verification of the products and the practice, issue of adulteration, poor quality, no regulation of practice of practitioners, no national guiding policy. The first edition of the traditional medicine policy was promulgated in 2007, even though it's been reviewed recently. inadequate standardization, non-referral of patients between themselves or between them and orthodox practitioners. So a lot of issues were on the table when you talk of the past of traditional medicine in Nigeria. These are examples of the kind of products you will see in open markets if you go to some of our localities. Looking at it is not the best, but a lot of accord between what you see and the national survey to go around the 6 medical zone to try and document what is the status of traditional medicine practice as diabetes mellitus in Nigeria. So various herbalists, practitioners were engaged, and the feedback made NAPRI to rethink how it went further to engage in this area. So improve and develop traditional medicine in the country. So Federal Ministry of Health through NIPRIT, through NIMA, National Institute of Medical Research in Yaba, Lagos, NAFDAC, SON, Traditional Complementary and Alternative Medicine Department, Federal Ministry of Health, setting the pace at that high level. Other ministries and agencies like Federal Ministry of Science and Tech, the Nigerian Natural Medicine Development Agency, also based in Lagos, Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment, SON, have roles also to play to talk about development of traditional medicine in Nigeria. Academia, associations, even faith-based organizations have also joined in promoting traditional medicine in Nigeria. Of course, we have the TMPs, the private sector, and the development partners. So all the efforts of all of this in taking traditional medicine from where it was has led to some of these kind of products where we are now. These are some of the products that NIPRIT has developed over time. The NIPRIT oil, the NIPRIMA for anti-malaria, the NIPRIFAN, the NIPRIMUNE, and then the Niclovix, which is the brand product of the institute that is used in management of sickle cell, is being commercialized and licensed sold to May and Baker for commercial production, so it can be available nationwide. That is the flagship of example of how you can take from the plant to the shelf with clinical trials conducted. So presently, where are we now in terms of traditional medicine in Nigeria? There's improved acceptability and accessibility to traditional medicines in Nigeria, better coordination of policy, governance, environment at national and subnational levels, improve R&D around TM decision making, better collaboration and partnership, improve contribution to national GDP, enhance cultivation and propagation practices. Of course, IPL and TKM issues are also there. There are also steps towards integrating it into the modern healthcare delivery system of the country. Of course, there's improved capacity building and availability of human resource for the development of traditional medicine, and there is an improvement in the regulatory framework as being provided by NAFDAC. This is just a brief chart to show the number of products that were registered by NAFDAC in 2015 to 2019, going through their website. So it was the highest in 2015 and actually lowest in 2016. So it's a curve that is not particularly increasing. So between 2019 and 2023, there will be need to know how registered with NAFDAC. So as we are now, there's improved policy orientation, governance, and coordination structure for traditional medicine development in the country. First traditional medicine policy was established in 2007. It's been included in the National Health Act as a means of the healthcare system of Nigeria. So this is the legal framework for traditional medicine in the country. Of course, curriculum developed, the NIPRIT, NIMA, NMD, and all of that have been established to promote traditional medicine in the country. Then there are development and public hearing on the TCAM bill, which is awaiting assent, or they will need to represent it back to National Assembly. All of this happened last year. And then there are traditional medicine boards that oversee some of these practices and practitioners at the state level. So this is an example of the act, and then these are documents that were generated in 2014 by the efforts of the Federal Ministry of Health. So there was a ministerial committee on herbal products promotion and export. And then there was also a committee that produced a 229-page document on the training of development for the training of herbal medicine practitioners at Nigerian medical schools. So these documents are awaiting the next step. So this was the previous effort in 2005 to look into the traditional medicine intellectual property regime. And between then and now, the other speakers will be able to let us know how far we have moved in this direction. So also we have improved R&D. Thousands of medicinal plants have been researched upon, series of ethnopharmacological studies carried out, ethnobotanical studies carried out, series of wild medicinal plants also domesticated. For example, the Artemisia annua that was mentioned earlier. And a lot of isolation, characterization, and clinical trials with few of such commercialized are also what we have in the country presently. So various surveys have been documented to see how we can document traditional medicine practice in the country. So these are examples of research compendia which collate various publications that were carried out and produced by NIPRID since 1990 up to 2018. Nearly 1,000 research publications in the value chain of traditional medicine. So various thematic reviews have also been done. So in terms of R&D, a lot has been done on herbal medicine, traditional medicine in the country. WHO supports traditional medicine, especially during the COVID era. It was a very major issue where they were celebrating the African Traditional Medicine Day. So in terms of human resource management for traditional medicine, also there is a great improvement. Certain universities in Nigeria are already awarding master's, MPhil, and PhD programs in herbal or traditional medicine. And NIPRID currently has gone to 60 states to try and train a minimum of 100 practitioners on how to improve their skills on quality, coordination, documentation, cultivation, and diagnosis of patients. WHO has also supported in some of these specialized trainings carried out by the Institute. So sometime last year, there was a WHO declaration on global commitments to traditional medicine. Most of these things are what Nigeria should try and focus on and push to the next level. Issue of promoting evidence-based traditional medicine practice, multi-regional collaboration, standardized documentation, networking, indigenous rights, and ethical constitution. Moving forward, Nigeria will need to see how we can domesticate this for our own progress. So for the future, what are we looking at? Official integration of into the national healthcare system of our traditional medicine practice and products. This is the best way to go. Increased role in primary healthcare promotion and achievement, going towards universal health coverage of traditional medicine into various job creation and poverty alleviation interventions in the country, using nanotechnology and other recent interventions to improve R&D for traditional medicine, of course, improve national GDP. So in conclusion, briefly, there is importance in preserving our traditional heritage. It's only a win-win situation for Nigeria as a country. There is need for call to action for improved and renewed collaboration and support in the value chain of traditional medicine promotion in the country. So we have to call for development of a national roadmap with sustained implementation actions so that every year, every quarter, you know the direction you are going in pushing traditional medicine to the next level. So every hand must be on deck, every leg must be on the wheel, whatever role you are playing, whether you are the one leading with the direction or you are the one holding the tools, everyone has a role to play in promoting traditional medicine in Nigeria. So thank you for your attention. Bon appetit. The food for traditional medicine is served in Nigeria. Thank you very much. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jegede, for that presentation. Very illuminating. Thank you for setting the tone for this discourse. We move next to our speaker, the second speaker for the day, no other person than Dr. Oluwatomi Pogo. She is the Managing Director of Iwosan Lagun Outpatient Clinic and Iwosan Lagun Wellness Center. Dr. Oluwatomi is a highly trained professional with diverse background in healthcare management and administration across notable brands in the modern healthcare space. Her expertise lies in identifying critical gaps within the health sector and providing solutions to enable quality delivery of care, setting global standards in keeping with international best practices, and creating an enabling environment for the practice of safe care. She obtained her medical degree from the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, and bagged an MBA in International Healthcare Management from the renowned University of Aberdeen, United Kingdom. She has worked at various health institutions before joining Iwosan Lagun Hospitals as a portfolio managing director in December 2022. Femi Kogo will speak on the topic, You Are What You Eat. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Professor Adewako. And thank you for inviting me to be one of the panelists. This is fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Jegede, for such a beautiful presentation. It was so insightful, very, very insightful. And I feel like I'm already becoming a lawyer, being part of this team. Okay, because when I sent out the flyer, people were wondering, how come you're the only doctor here? You're in the midst of lawyers, and these are not just small lawyers, you know. And I'm glad that we're taking this discussion out of the medical space to create an awareness so that people would actually understand, how did we get here in the first instance? How did we take in so much of Western medicine and leave our own resources? I think it was just conditioning, because we were conditioned to believe that Western medicine was the best, you know. And so even we as doctors, we would encourage Western medicine. When people come, whilst we're taking history, the first, I mean, part of our question will be, okay, so what herbs are you taking? Because we wouldn't encourage you to take herbs, you know. And that's because, and you can't blame us. You can't really blame the medical practitioners. It was because, you know, at that time, herbs were not, we didn't have any dosage. There was no regulatory body to say, oh, this is the measurement. And so people were abusing it, really. And it was causing some sort of, a lot of illnesses. And, you know, we couldn't actually, there was nobody to say, oh, this is how to go about it. This is what we need to do. And thanks to COVID, COVID was like an eye opener that just turned the world upside down and made us realize that, you know what, these herbs are actually very good, and we can get so much from going back to the roots, going back to how things were in those days, you know. So at Iwosan Wellness Center, what we do is we literally just encourage what is natural. Natural in the sense that I can't believe I would be the one talking about this, because I've always believed, oh, you have to eat what the Western people give you, but it's not so. We realize that the body can actually repair itself. So by just going back to the natural, and what do we mean by natural? We are for us, nutrition is all about plant-based nutrition. It has to be plant-based for us. And so our saying here is, we will get you to extreme health. And by extreme health, we mean you taking the natural things, you know, taking on the natural food resources that would help you live long and live better. We've realized, and there's an experiment currently going on at the Stanford University, where they're realizing that in America, the major source of medical condition, or there's a pandemic there, because heart attack and all the other issues, cardiovascular issues are so common. And the major source of this illnesses is from the food, what they consume. It's just the food. If we take out the food and people go back to eating natural things, the body will repair itself and people can live longer. So for us at Iwosan Wellness, our journey, helping you to get to extreme health, is all about saying, you know what, you need to stay on the plant-based nutrition. And plant-based nutrition for us is not being on a vegetarian diet or being a vegan. For us, it is, okay, so how can we cut off your animals? Because we realize that evidence-based research shows that animals are the biggest source of inflammation. And what does inflammation do? Inflammation is actually a defense mechanism. But if the tissue or if the body is not able to repair itself while there's inflammation, then it leads to other things. So it leads to tissue damages and all. And it is the biggest source is animals. So your chicken, your goat, your meat, whatever source, snail, prawn, whatever source, fish, even fish. People actually thought fish is a healthy food, but it is not a healthy food because it's layered with all sorts of fats as well. So for us at Iwosan Wellness, our gospel, sorry to use that word, or what we preach is, let's go back to the basics. Can we reduce the number of days you eat animals? We're not saying don't eat it at all, because you still need to get some benefit from it. But can we reduce it? Can we reduce it to twice a week? And for those that have pre-existing medical conditions, can we reduce it to once a week? Once a week with active exercises. That is what we preach. And I have seen the results, so I can talk about this. I am an ambassador. I mean, when I was told to cut down on my animals, I was like, no way, this is not happening. I love my meat so much. I love my chicken. But the moment I got on that journey, I saw the effect. And I realized that we're having the metabolic syndromes, we're having high blood pressure. There's so much, and it's going up. Chronic non-communicable diseases is how we classify them in medicine. High blood pressure is going up, high blood sugar is going up, high cholesterol is going up. What is the root cause of all of this? At the root, at the heart of it, is what we consume. What we consume is at the heart of it. And from the Stanford, it was so when I noticed that Stanford University was doing a documentary on all of this, I was so excited because it was like, yes, this is the message we should be preaching to the world. And these are people that can help us carry this message anyway. They have brought in Western medicine and they are going back to say, you know what, okay, we found out that what we taught people how to do is actually killing people. So let's do some series of experiments so that we can have evidence behind what we're doing. And they brought in 4 sets of twins, and for each of the twins, they put one person on the regular diet, eating a lot of animals and the regular animals and plant-based meals, and for the other twin who was on just solely plant-based, just eating the fruits, the vegetables, and all. And they saw the difference. They noticed the changes and how well people can live longer and improved lives just by going back to the basics. During COVID, we realized that people were taking what? Anti-inflammatory things like turmeric, ginger, garlic. Why? Because they noticed that they were anti-oxidative vegetables and things, food sources that would prevent them from having COVID, or even if they get COVID, would not allow them have complications of COVID or would help them sustain them through that period. So I'm very excited that you have taken on this course to create the awareness, and we're glad to continue to partner with you on this journey so that we can actually embrace what is hard and just go back to the basics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kogo. This is so much, this is really big. We're going to come back to you on this. Thank you for this illuminating presentation. And we heard you loud and clear. Thank you so much. Thank you. We move to the next speaker, who is Ms. Titilayo Edet. After Ms. Edet, we will go to Ms. Jade Kudetakis. Then we have Dr. Lalude next. Ms. Titilayo Edet is the Education and Healthy Living Consultant and Managing Partner, Source and Origin Concept. She's a graduate of Educational Management and Economics from the prestigious University of Ibadan. Titilayo is also a teacher with many years of experience working with both children and teachers. Ms. Titilayo Edet is the founder of Source and Origin, an advocacy center for nature-based prevention and care of ailments. She's a healthy living ambassador of Rafa Healthy Living Institute, a product of Maria Montessori Institute, London. She has organized and participated in various workshops and seminars on the use of herbs for a healthy lifestyle. She's going to speak on the topic, natural remedies for health and well-being. You have the floor for another 15 minutes, Ms. Edet.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Adewoko. I'm glad to be here. Greetings to everyone. And I thank Dr. Oluwatomi for that presentation. When it comes to healthy living, that's my thing. So I'm going to be talking to you this afternoon on natural remedies for health and wellness. Natural remedies for health and wellness, or for health and well-being. When we're talking about things that are natural, because in the society right now, there are a lot of synthetic food. So let's talk natural. When we're saying natural, we mean what is original. What is original? So original remedies, original medicine original treatment that will help us flourish physically, that will help us grow strong and healthy, that will take us to that state of well-being, to the state of wellness. So remedies, these remedies are found in food. Our food is our medicine. We should actually take our food as medicine. There is a connection between food, medicine, and healing. There is a connection. The food that we eat influences our health. Whatever we take in influences our health. So for us to keep our bodies in health, in a state of well-being, we must do two things. We must gain knowledge, and then we must be self-disciplined. So to be in a state of wellness, a state of well-being consistently, we must have knowledge and we must have self-discipline. Reverend Tony Akinyemi, who is the founder of the Healthy Living Institute, would always say, what we need is not more medication, but more education. Because the best prescription is knowledge. Best prescription is knowledge. For a lot of people, there are some people who know what to do. They know what is right, but somehow they're just not disciplined enough to go that way, So when we talk about products of natural origin, we'll find out that products of natural origin, they are actually the source and the root of modern medicine. I need you to think about that. Products of natural origin, they are actually the source and the root of modern medicine. Products of natural origin serve as effective home remedies for curing many infirmities. Effective home remedies. So these products should be found in our homes, in our pharmacy, which is our kitchen. Like they say, charity begins from home. So these natural remedies should be found in our home, and they cure many infirmities. So this morning, this afternoon, beg your pardon, I want us to talk about healing plants. So in the healing plant category, let's pick the scent leaf, for example. The scent leaf, very common, it's all around us. It's a nutritional supplement of natural origin. The scientific name of this is Ocimum gratissimum, which is also known as clove basil, the scent leaf. Now, the scent leaf has so many benefits. It's very beneficial to our health. It is rich in vitamin A, and vitamin A is known to cure any eye infections. The scent leaf. The scent leaf is also rich in magnesium. Magnesium helps to reduce bad cholesterol and increases our blood circulation. If you get scent leaf, you can dice a few leaves, maybe 3, maybe 4, in your meal to boil your food or to just take it on its own. Now, for tea lovers, if you are a tea lover like me, you just put it in hot water. Just a few leaves in hot water, let it simmer and drink. Scent leaf has a lot of calming effects on the stomach, and so it is very good for indigestion. It actually cools the stomach. Scent leaf. Scent leaf also relieves heartburn. It's good for menstrual pain. It's good for nausea. You want to make vegetable, make use of scent leaf. You can use it on its own, just as your normal food, like you would normally eat your potatoes or whatever, scent leaf. And you can also add it to other vegetables and take it as food. Scent leaf is an anti-inflammatory food. It has anti-inflammatory properties. So it helps with treating arthritis. It contains calcium that can help us with bone density. It can help us increase, I beg your pardon, it can help us increase bone density. So it prevents diseases in the bone. Scent leaf. Now, scent leaf also has this very nice aroma, which helps to relieve stress. If you take one or two in your hands and you just use it to wrap it around or squeeze it, the scent is so welcoming. It's so welcoming. And so, if we educate ourselves on a plant like this, the scent leaf, we educate ourselves on the uses, and then we incorporate it into our meals. That is medicine on its own. And then we get to benefit of all the healing properties. Another healing plant I'd like to talk about is the lemongrass. The lemongrass. The lemongrass is also a natural remedy. It has antioxidant properties. The lemongrass helps us to fight free radicals in the body, free radicals that damage the cells. The lemongrass helps us to fight off all the free radicals. Lemongrass helps to lower cholesterol. It helps in preventing infection. It helps to boost oral health. The stick of lemongrass, you can actually chew it in your mouth. You can use it to clean your mouth, and it helps with mouth sores. So like I said, education is very important. Once we have enough education about these plants, about the herbs, about the uses, then we'll be in a better place. These plants are very potent, and if used correctly, we'll find out that our state of well-being will be more. We'll be in a better place of health. And then once when we see the improvement, we see the reactions in our bodies, we'll be able to recommend to our friends, we'll be able to recommend to our family members, as long as it's coming from our pharmacy, coming from our kitchen. All this food, all these plants, these herbs are readily available. So we just need education to be able to use them very well. I believe that from the little that you've heard, you'll be able to incorporate this in your meals, and you'll be able to testify of the benefits. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you, Ms. Edith. Thank you so much. We heard so much, not so little, and we have a lot of takeaways from what you just said. I mean, a lot of takeaways, free of charge. Thank you so much. For example, you said, I think this is very instructive. What we need is not more medication, but more education. The best prescription is knowledge. Products of natural origin are the root of modern medicine. And you also said our pharmacy is our kitchen in our homes. Thank you so much for this presentation, very brilliant one. So we move on to Ms. Jade Letakis, who is a friend of the farm. And she's been one of our participants and collaborators in the past. And we are privileged to have her one more time at this time. She's a lecturer and lead in intellectual property law of Abertay University, UK. She has taught at the University of Western Cape and University of Cape Town in South Africa. She will take us to the next level, connecting traditional knowledge to Western knowledge system and all of that, all of those issues. She will help us to unpack and deepen our understanding on that. She will speak on the topic, traditional knowledge and ownership in non-Western perspective. Ms. Jade, you have another 15 minutes.
Hi, so thank you very much for having me here again. So all of the topics that have been discussed so far are extremely interesting, and I really love this kind of thing because I grew up in a family where, you know, if you had a toothache, you would put cloves on it. If you had a sore throat, you have honey, you know, all of these sorts of things. So the idea of food as medicine is something I really love, and it's something that I try and, you know, push with my friends and my partner and all those sorts of people. And what I'm wanting to do is, I'm a lawyer by trade and law academic, and my work really centers on the notion of decolonization, specifically decolonization of intellectual property. So what do we mean by that? Well, basically, it means that I want to challenge traditional notions of what we would hold to be inherent truths within the legal IP framework, such as today, the notion of ownership, right? Ownership over intellectual property. So ownership of traditional knowledge has long been a contested topic in the international community. It goes all the way back to the 80s when people started writing about indigenous cultures who made use of plants and yields from the earth in medicinal ways. And the problem, of course, that arises with the conversation about traditional knowledge and ownership in the IP legal space is that intellectual property was developed centuries earlier based upon a Lockean capitalistic notion of ownership. The Statute of Anne, which is, you know, accepted as being the first legal instrument for IP, is from the 1700s. And at that time, of course, Africa as independent nation states and a separate continent from Europe wasn't a thing. It was just little Portugal, little Spain, little England, right? And so it's also premised upon the theories of Westerners like John Locke. John Locke was a philosopher theorist from the 1600s in England, and it's his theories of ownership that really are the bedrock of a Western capitalistic notion of ownership upon which the IP framework is premised. And John Locke, at best, had a very contradictory idea of slavery and Black people. He certainly wouldn't have seen Black people as being people, right? He wouldn't have seen them as being legal entities who can be embedded with legal value, and certainly not ownership. And this is really one of the problems we have with retrospectively trying to fit traditional knowledge into a framework that was created excluding those very people from whom traditional knowledge comes, right? Because the IP framework, as I said, was made before Africa was even seen as an independent continent. And the local people of Africa were not seen as being capable of ownership rights. They weren't even seen as being capable of understanding what we mean by ownership. And it's that assumption that indigenous people don't understand, don't appreciate, ownership rights that was used as a justification historically for settlers to colonize the land, right? They dock at the Cape, they see the local people, but the local people don't seem to understand ownership as they understand it. So they say, oh, well, it's free land, we can take it. Right, so this idea that indigenous people don't have a Western notion of ownership has historically been used as a way to disenfranchise the indigenous communities and to justify colonization and the using of the law as a weapon to take away from indigenous communities. And we can still see that today. We can still see that colonial mindset with weaponizing the law in this way to disenfranchise indigenous communities. We can see this in the form of what's called biopiracy, which is where you will get companies such as Pfizer or Nestle, who will tend to commercialize traditional knowledge. For example, the examples I can think of with my background being from South Africa are the Hoodia plant in Rooibos. So the Hoodia plant is a plant that has traditionally been used by the San people of South Africa. And what they would do is they would chew on this plant and it would stifle their hunger. Because obviously when you're living, you know, a traditional lifestyle, you don't have a steady source of food. You can't just pop down to the shop. So during times of less, they would use the Hoodia plant to stifle the hunger. And as you can imagine, Pfizer, you know, they see this and they want to commercialize it and sell it as a weight loss treatment, sort of like a Ozempic would be today, right? They want to try and sell it to, you know, yoga moms to lose 5 pounds. And Rooibos is what we in South Africa would know as red bush. So Rooibos directly translated is red bush, a type of tea. And this tea in South Africa, any South African will know about the myriad of health benefits of Rooibos. If you're sick, you drink Rooibos. If you want to look nice, you put Rooibos on your face, right? Rooibos is supposed to have benefits internally, medicinally, for inflammation and all sorts of things like that, in digestion. And it can also be used topically as a cosmeceutical, right, for sensitive skin and burns and those sorts of things. And again, the Khoisan community have been using Rooibos in this medicinal way for centuries. But then you get companies like Nestle who want to commercialize it and sell it and make money off of it. So this idea of biopiracy is where you've got outsiders taking traditional knowledge and trying to commercialize it to the detriment of these traditional communities, based on this assumption that, oh, well, they don't really understand ownership in the way we do. They're not maximizing profits from it. So there's nothing wrong in us taking it and doing that instead. Much the same as colonizers wouldn't understand the relationship indigenous people had with land as being a valid relationship worthy of legal protection. So we can see some symmetries there that I just wanted to sort of highlight, because I don't think people have really highlighted those symmetries before. And I'll often get people telling me that indigenous communities don't acknowledge individual ownership, which I find absolutely startling, because they'll tell it to me like they know it, right? They'll be like, oh, well, I'm well versed in this. I understand that indigenous communities only know collective ownership. They don't recognize individual ownership. And, you know, these will be people in the legal sphere, people who you would expect to know better, because that's obviously wrong. Literature has, across many indigenous societies in the developing world, spanning many decades, found that, in fact, indigenous societies do recognize various levels of ownership. And this can range from individual rights to family rights, community, village, national, all different sorts of rights can exist within different communities. Professor Lawal Arawala has written about this. I'm very privileged to have worked with her on many projects, and she's someone who I reference when talking about this to say that actually it has been proven that indigenous communities do recognize individual ownership, it's a common misconception that they don't. You can reject the theories of John Locke, the 1600s English philosopher, and capitalism without necessitating a rejection of individual ownership, right? The two are not mutually exclusive. So what these indigenous communities do have that's different from a Western perspective of ownership is that they recognize ownership, whether individual or collective or familial, or whatever type of ownership you're talking about, as coming with a corresponding duty, right? In a very Spider-Man sense, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So they recognize ownership as having a corresponding duty, which we in the West don't. In the West, we say that if you are the owner of intellectual property, your right is an exclusionary right. So you have the right to exploit this product, this item, this work, to the exclusion of all others, and you don't owe anybody anything. It's your right and yours alone. But in traditional communities, they don't do it that way. They do have corresponding duties. And these duties can be to other people, for example, to share the yield or share the benefit, but it can also be a duty owed to the land, right? A duty to tend to the land. The idea that the land, Mother Nature will provide, and in return, we have to look after her. We need to nourish her and keep her well. And that's what makes the current framework, the current IP framework, problematic. Namely, that when looking at indigenous communities, they have a corresponding duty, whereas the West doesn't. In my examples of Hoodia and Rooibos, in both of these cases, what happened ultimately was the courts ordered benefits sharing agreements between the representatives of the indigenous communities and the commercial entrepreneurs, Pfizer and Nestle. And these benefit sharing agreements are basically common practice in intellectual property, and it's where you have to receive an equitable share of the benefits that arise from the use of these items. So this can be expressed in terms of money, or it can be non-money, but essentially it's almost always money. So basically it's an agreement made between the proprietors and the representatives of the indigenous communities to share in the commercial benefits. But the problem with these benefit sharing agreements that are court ordered in these examples is that, again, they are very Western in their notion. They don't recognize a corresponding duty. So, for example, these benefit sharing agreements make no mention of land preservation or preserving the resources. And ultimately, what you get is an overcultivation and a biodiversity crisis, because the cultivation of Rooibos has biodiversity issues, and the Hoodia plant has biodiversity issues, and the respect for the land isn't there. So these Western approaches to a non-Western problem just don't work, because the benefit sharing agreements assume all the indigenous community wants is some money. But that's a very Western notion of what ownership means. Ownership can be monetary, but it can also be non-monetary, and it can also come with corresponding duties. Now, some people say that all of these inconsistencies between the way that traditional communities recognize ownership and the way that we in the West recognize ownership means that intellectual property cannot possibly be the appropriate mechanism by which to offer protection to indigenous communities of their traditional knowledge. So instead, they say what we need to do is make some sort of sui generis or some sort of separate but equal right or framework to fit indigenous communities and traditional knowledge into, because it's a square peg in a round hole. You can't make IP retrospectively fit a community whose ideas and foundations are so fundamentally different. However, I would disagree with that. I would argue the opposite. I would argue that there is an obligation on the international IP community to include traditional communities and to evidence flexibility and inclusivity in the development of beneficial frameworks for Indigenous communities within the current IP framework. And there are duties placed upon the intellectual property bodies to do this, which we can see in the law itself. For example, the TRIPS agreement, which is one of the main pieces of legislation dealing with intellectual property law at an international level, lists in its preamble, in its introductory portion, one of the main underlying public policy aims of international IP being to assist the furtherance of developmental objectives. And we can see the sort of talk of raising standards of living and sustainable development being goals of intellectual property. Again, in the agreement establishing the World Trade Organization, in the Berne Convention, in all of these documents, we don't talk about it very often. It doesn't get as much airplay as it ought to get. It's not seen as being very sexy, very topical, but it's there. It's in the foundations of this framework. So you cannot say that we need to focus at an international level on developmental objectives and sustainable development, raising standards of living in developing nations, but exclude a body of people who are so intricately connected with developing nations. Dutfield and Sutherson, they say that Indigenous communities are so intricately linked with the land, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that they're effectively indivisible from the land, as if they were born of the land. So you cannot talk about helping developmental objectives in Africa whilst excluding the original African communities from that conversation. That doesn't work. That's not a global framework. That's a framework paying lip service to developmental objectives. And if you have that sort of thing happening, you run the risk of having an illegitimate legal framework. And we know that if a framework loses its legitimacy, it basically fails to function as a legal framework. And what really made me think about this as a topic to talk about is that in May, in a few weeks, the World Intellectual Property Organization is holding a diplomatic conference with a view to creating new legal instrumentation to protect traditional knowledge, to prevent patents and from being misappropriated, patents misappropriating traditional knowledge and things like that. And it really made me start thinking that it's very, very important that Indigenous communities are given center stage in representing their own interests and understanding of ownership here. It's very important that the global IP framework represent the global framework, the global sphere. So these Indigenous communities need to participate in the way in which we go about changing the legal IP framework to better represent their own notions of ownership, which will differ from community to community, because there's no one Indigenous community. Even within Nigeria or South Africa, there are many different tribes, and the different tribes do things a little bit differently, or sometimes a lot differently. And there's been a lot of call in the international community to have greater flexibility shown at an international level when it comes to exclusions and limitations from intellectual property protection. I myself have been involved in that. I've written about that. I've done petitions for that. But I think that it's equally as important that greater flexibility be shown when it comes to defining ownership of property in the first instance. And this should happen both at an international level as well as a national level, because as I've said, different tribes within a particular nation state will have different notions of ownership. So the idea that you can have one international conference that will set the standards for all Indigenous communities is incomplete. It's a good step forward, but it's incomplete. And challenging this idea of ownership when it comes to intellectual property can be seen as a bit extreme. It can be seen as extreme because this has been the foundation upon which we've built the IP framework for hundreds of years. But when it comes to other areas of law, like say contract and criminal law, we say that the law needs to develop and change with the time. We are happy that you can't be swung on the yard arm until you're dead because you used the Lord's name in vain anymore, right? We're happy about that. That's great news. We like that development. The law should change. The law has to be responsive to the changing circumstances of society. And why don't we have that same approach when it comes to intellectual property? Why do we still have the same concept of ownership that was given to us in 1600 by a white guy who lived in England, who probably didn't actually see any Black people in his whole life, had never been to Africa, and almost certainly didn't see Black people as being human, much less the bearers of ownership rights or anything to add to an IP system? Why don't we want to develop that further and make that more representative? So that's really the point of my topic of discussion, is to sort of centralize this idea that you don't talk about traditional communities and their ownership rights in the third person. You talk about it with inclusionary devices. You include them in that conversation and you're open to change. Passing the buck to someone else, saying we need to make a different framework, we need to make a different type of right to protect Indigenous people, is really just kicking a can down the road. And that's not the solution. The solution is to change the framework to make it work. If the framework doesn't work, you fix it. You don't build a new one, right? If your shower breaks down in your house, you don't move house. You fix the shower, right? No one moves house because of that. So that's my contribution to this very interesting discussion, and I thank you for your time.
Yes, Ms. J, thank you as well for your time. Thank you for this brilliant presentation. Thank you for that insight into the distinctions and the cultural and legal divergences between TK and Western knowledge system. Thank you so much for that insight, taking us to the next level. We have two more speakers left, but we have some questions already coming in. These questions are not particularly directed to any speaker, so we have our panel that should be ready to take any of the questions that suits their fancy. Our next speaker will be no other person than Dr. Nick Lude. He's a lawyer, a writer, an academic, a researcher, and a certified public policy analyst with the London School of Economics and Political Science. He is currently a lecturer in law at the Wisconsin International University College, Ghana, and an environmental, social, and governance consultant at the Institute of Directors, Ghana. Dr. Lalude is widely published and a regular conference speaker. He will speak on the topic ecocentrism and green technology, the management of forest resources and traditional medicine for environmental justice. Dr. Lalude, you have 50 minutes to speak to us on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to open one day I shall no longer exist. Tickets were encroached upon it. Later the forest will push past the wall and going back to man as well. Sometimes my thoughts go from the forest and losing me. It's thinking it's old and I'm thoughts with my brain. Forest does not want. So this captures the interrelatedness nature and how they're so connected. And even if you look at the food chain, you see how the connection is. Sometimes nature is brutal, sometimes nature is forgiving. But then when we consider the framework in which we have often considered nature, and we often see nature that might be what is largely responsible for what we have now. So I favor ecocentrism, a perspective into examining nature and also the management. And of course, traditional medicine. How ecocentrism, if at nature through the favored anthropocentric view, which is a human-centered, which is the dominant worldview, you see that we might eventually wake up without having these things that we often would look at when we talk about tradition. So of course, those traditional medicine products come from forest resources. So ecocentrism is an environmental philosophy that is nature, humanity, it regards nature, the moral agent. It challenges the dominant human-centered worldview, which is anthropocentrism, that treats nature as a resource for human use. In other words, ecocentrism emerged in the West as a radical response to the conventional environmental movement, which is anthropocentrism. Because when you look at environmental law instrument, colonial times, even to this very moment, you realize that most have an anthropocentric foundation, and these have always been a problem to adequate preservation of forest resources. So now, ecocentrism advocates for a direct and non-violent action to protect and preserve the wilderness, which is seen as the source of life and beauty. Ecocentrism also emphasizes the importance of maintaining the health and the diversity of the ecosystem, its inhabitants, and recognizes the inherent value of all living things and ecosystems, including their non-living elements. Now, ecocentrism proposes that there should be a societal shift towards ecocentrism. That is not, this is not only ethical necessity, also pragmatic essentiality. It can help us address the world's current environmental crisis from the perspective of ethical, evolutionary, spiritual. So environmental justice, on the other hand, allocation of environmental risks, burdens and benefits among all members of the national, including plants, cost animals. So this considers ecosystem a global community where every member has the right to its own existence, well-being. So environmental justice also acknowledges the interdependence and interconnectedness of all members of the ecosystem, and the need for cooperation and solidarity. So environmental justice aims to eliminate the environmental injustices that result from exploitation and restoration of nature. So environmental justice also seeks to include the marginalized and vulnerable groups in decision making and policy making processes to protect the ecosystem. Now, if we look at ecocentrism and how it can help in the adoption of new technologies, like that, ecocentrism and environmental justice are complementary and mutually reinforcing that can offer any use in the ecosystems, management, and survival. So by adopting an ecocentric and environmental we can respect and value the ecosystem, we can ensure the well-being, harmony of all its members. And this is why we need to adopt green technology. So we can also foster a sense of responsibility and stewardship towards the ecosystem in ways that protect and and also promote a peace and justice. Because if you look at what is currently happening in both the liberation to environmental degradation, that is the problem that we reach. It's been centered around human interest, always around human interest. So now, ecocentrism and environmental justice can help us create a more sustainable and equitable future for ourselves. And can see that adoption of within the African context is something that huge because many countries now are adopting plastics. We started using plastic because of introduction to the Western way of packaging, non-sustainable material. Because look, uh, consider yesteryears, those times when people will package food in some kind of leaves. There are special leaves for packaging food and other things like available materials. And now we have people packaging things in biodegradable materials. And the problem here in Ghana, the problem in Nigeria, even a bigger problem in Ghana. When you go to the community, coastline community, where we have fishermen, that you see a lot of plastics floating fast fashion, floating in the water, and these are chased, the fishes of marine life into the ocean and this to get fish. So in Africa, the indigenous religions had a rich system of myths and taboos that helps preserve nature. In African societies until colonial Christianity denounced this kind of the hidden system. So this is not to undermine ecocentrism, but to highlight the difference between ecocentrism and the ancient animist traditional practices. Now, ecocentrism and the ancient animist traditional practices points of convergence, they are not the same. And when I talk about ecocentrism in of ecocentrism values, the ancient animist practices. So now, this ecocentric framework within the African context combines the spiritual with the moral goal in the protection of resources, environmental justice, and traditional medicine. So now, like I said, so great technology can be inspired by indigenously conceived ecocentric and recognizes the value and potential of local knowledge and technology in the context of Africa can also be seen as creativity that can generate solutions for the environmental challenges that face the continent. Now, it can be found in various forms and levels of beliefs. Maintain soil fertility, the use of solar energy to power rural communities. Now, in Nigeria, traditional medicine that many people find it affordable, orthodox medicine, rising cost. But the station is also having it. For instance, there's this tree whose name is Vitillaria. It is also known as the sheep butter tree. This is depleting due to deforestation. Extract is also used for flesh food. So I talk about the Convention on Biological Diversity and Ecocentrism Forest Resources Management. Now, the Convention on Biological Diversity is the legal instrument also for despite the fact that it is to conserve genetic resources and also to push for the conservation of the biological diversity. But yet, it's not an ecocentric issue. It still fosters
We lost Dr. Lalude. Dr. Lalude. I think we've lost him. We have just to fill in that gap, so we're not it doesn't we're not in suspense for a long period. I think that we can look at the questions, and when it comes back, we can take him to continue finish up. We have a couple of questions here if our speakers are still online with us. The first question is from Nishikora Mosa. I think it's better for me to read the questions out and allow the speakers to take them, the relevant one to them. I think that's a better approach so that we can save some time. We have about 5 or 6 questions. I will just take them and I will invite our speakers to note those questions.
Dr. Lalude is back, Prof. He's back.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So I was talking about the Convention on Biological and now we need that will address environmental, and we need a paradigm shift towards ecocentric values. It believes and species and ecosystems. It believes ecosystems should be respected regardless of the benefit for human uses. So the limitations of the convention for forest resources in the area where the concept of conservation is not sufficient to protect the diversity and the integrity of the ecosystem. There is a need for a regional ecocentric legal regime that will advocate for nature's preservation, in line with that ecocentrism. And then there are challenges and there are opportunities managing forest resources in Nigeria and Ghana. Now, these challenges towards the regulation of management of forest resources is difficult. The demand for land for agriculture and residential purposes are trended up. And there's also an aggressive contention between the state and different purposes. There's the interference of political interests, which has not made it easier. However, there's no doubt that the effective management of resources will preserve the effectiveness of traditional leads to the optimal objective of the activity. So there are opportunities for effective management of forest resources. And the management of forest resources can boost the practice of and can enhance biodiversity and improve quality of life. Now, the resulting environmental justice that can be achieved with forest resources management will help in maintaining balance. So, since traditional medicine in Nigeria and Ghana is highly regarded, management of forest resources moves much from it. So, ultimately, the protection against exploitation of forest resources is a tremendous medicine practice in Nigeria and Ghana. In these two West African countries. Now, environmental pollution, forests are essential. Environmental pollution. So the use of forest in Nigeria for household nutrition and healthcare is high with 39 plant species being consumed either as food or for the purpose of traditional medicine. So most of the plants are used, for instance, in the Yoruba herbal medicine mixtures. In Ghana, traditional medicine practitioners utilize traditional knowledge passed down through generations in their daily practice. Unfortunately, the landscape is changing due to that demand for land. A recent study found that forest dwellers in southwest Ghana rely on 70 kinds of trees for curing up to 83. Now, these plants have high amounts of substances, benefit health, but many are also endangered that, such as excessive harvesting and farming expansion that cause many forest edge communities, their main form of treatment, because they have limited access to Western medicine, cultural beliefs. And there is now I found that government-led conservation efforts maintaining traditional knowledge are key to protecting this medicinal treatment. But I argue that preservation should be the language. If we say conservation, we still have that mindset or so there are benefits and also there are limitations for the ecocentric framework for addressing environmental and traditional medicine issues. And this can inspire a sense of responsibility and help to preserve and restore the biodiversity which is essential for the provision of ecosystem services and the welfare of so it can support the development and application based on local knowledge and offer solutions to environmental challenges, health needs of people. So ecocentrism is a framework that for a long time we see that colonial values have through deforestation, through economic models, and that have promoted the depletion of natural resources and an agenda that puts human consumption before environmental. So these colonial values are permanently integrated into African value system. And there is often confusion taking authentic African values from the lodge. So it is not possible that the perspective on African is driven more towards the colonial perspective. Consumption, relying on the term sustainable to tone down the effect of consumption. So the limitations of ecocentrism extend to an uninformed culture of engaging destructive agricultural practices and the use of herbicides. It can encounter resistance, opposition from the political and economic exploitation and oppression of other humans. So we've seen that it can be difficult to implement and enforce in context of governance but that is not to say that there should be efforts to push ecocentric agenda that will benefit other legal instruments, protection of forest resources, and effective management. So thank you for.
Thank you, Dr. Olalude. Thank you there. We have a bit of a problem with your audio in the course of your presentation. Thank you for bringing us another important perspective to the topic. We have our last speaker, our own Professor Ayoyemi Lawal-Awolo. She's going to tie all this together. Professor Awolo holds a PhD in Kent University, United Kingdom. She's a leading expert on traditional knowledge systems and intellectual property law. She was one of the pioneer staff at the National Copyright Institute, the research and training arm of the Nigerian Copyright Commission, and she subsequently taught at the Faculty of Law, Nasarawa State University. She has several years of teaching, research, and consulting experience with focus on intellectual property rights, industrial law, privacy, and data protection. She's widely published in both national and international peer-reviewed journals. In 2018, She was a research fellow at Kent Law School, University of Kent, Canterbury, UK. She's currently Professor of Law at Babcock University and partner in an A legal consultant. She will speak on the topic, methods of traditional medicine production as intellectual property. Professor
Thank you so
Yemi,
much.
you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much for the introduction. Greetings, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. And I guess what I'll be looking at will, in a way, tie everything together and then speak about an area that is not often spoken about. Mr. Ajola Jegede talked about the various arms of TM, various people are involved, and how some perceive TM as food, and how we have so many herbs around us that are useful for our well-being. I heard Dr. Kogo speak as well, and how doctors are thinking this is the way out. What you eat is what you get, or who you become, or who you are, or determines your well-being. And the Lalode has looked at the environment, and Jade spoke about decolonization of intellectual property rights and stuff like that. I would like to look at this in a way where many can imagine. You walk on the streets of Lagos, you see women with bowls on their heads and bottles, and they have different liquids in it, and you see people patronize them. It's traditional medicine, whether properly done or not. There's no form of regulation or enough recognition for it. You go to the markets and you see women, they call them Iliriomo Yoruba. They're like pediatricians, they look after children. They have all sorts of herbs for these kids, you know. Even I have taken a friend there, you know, they have all different things to take care of little children, and it has not caused them any harm. You have herbalists, you have diviners, divination is part of traditional medicine. You have NIPRID and the rest, research institutes, having different sections of traditional medicine. You have pharmaceutical industries as well, indigenous pharmaceutical industries, that what they produce falls within traditional medicine or traditional knowledge. There's this, so I'm going to look at it from two perspectives. I'm going to look at it from the verbal healing and the non-verbal. Now we've talked about the verbal, we've all talked about it. Now the non-verbal, most people will run away from it, or they don't even want to hear about it because they feel it's evil, it's juju, it's not something we should be doing. And that is what I'm going to call incantations. The Yoruba will call it offo. Now, I've seen someone who told me she went to the doctors, and the doctor said, you know what? You have nothing wrong with you. It's your mental state affecting your physical state. If you can get your mental state right, then you'll be fine. So usually the verbal has to do with, you understand, your mindset. But some people will say that they are chanting and all that. An interesting thing with the verbal is incantations is they're so poetic. And we know poetry is eligible for copyright protection when you look at intellectual properties. They're so poetic and they're so dramatic, meaning performance, another aspect of intellectual property that can be looked at in this situation. So performers write poetry, but there's a problem, and Jade spoke about some of this problem. For copyright, it can be eligible, but it has to be original and fixed. Some of these incantations are not fixed. But you see someone like Wande Abimbola, you know, he has a book, you have incantations, those are fixed. So maybe those are fine, you know, so they're covered, they're protectable. But what is wrong with fixing, what is wrong with protecting something that is original but not fixed? Like Jade said, the Statute of Anne, copyright started with the printing press. For us, it didn't start with the printing press. It started with rock art. If anybody knows about rock art, on rocks, you have different artistic works, different inscriptions. And then one of the things that you see on rock art is medical procedures. Somebody that is constipated, you see a picture of something being inserted into them from the backside, and then it's over. And you have rock art, not the printing press. So that is to say, we were creative before we even had any interference with the West. Creativity is known all over Africa. We didn't start, we had our own ways, our own customs, our own laws, our own practices. We were surviving. It was traditional knowledge, a survival mechanism. We had our own ways of doing everything, including entertainment, creativity, medicine. So I asked this question, is traditional medicine the alternative? Because when there was no orthodox medicine, what did we have? Perhaps it's actually the orthodox one, and the orthodox is the alternative. And we need to go back into this because Mr. Jegede looked at the past. We have to look at the past for the present and for the future. And so looking at what Jade said as well, we're thinking of why can't we include verbal healing, incantations, poetic, dramatic, has a whole lot of things you can call it relating to copyright in the copyright law as original without fixation, but having protection. What stops it? What stops us? Copyright is territorial in nature anyway. Why can't we shift things around? One cap does not fit all. Professor Adiba Mbadiwe will say that one cap does not fit all. And in this situation, why should we go sui generis? Why? Because the West does not understand where we're coming from regarding creativity and the things we do. And that's on one hand, because I'm still going to go to the other part, which is the non-verbal healing, which is what we have all talked about this morning. And that's looked at from an intellectual property perspective, more as scientific. You know, you see them in the institutes. They have the laboratories. They have everything they need to do what they have to do to extract some bioactive, materials from plants or even animals, to get stuff to heal people. I don't know what happened to Niprisan. Maybe Mr. Jegede will tell us later. And it was for sickle cell. And I saw so many materials by so many doctors, by so many scientists saying it actually works. It's good. You can use it for whatever, for sickle cell patients that they need it. Whatever happened to it, I'll ask him later. Maybe he'll be able to tell us. But these things, you've seen so many people actually show or talk about its efficacy, showing that it actually works. Not everything might work, but what are we doing with the ones that work? How are we going to be able to show the world or show people that these aspects are good enough? Because there's so many things going on now that shows some aspects of these things are good enough to be consumed for your well-being, whether you're ill or not. Some are for preventive, some are for curing, but these things are good for us. So we look at the patents. The Patents Act now, I was looking at copyright with the verbal healing, which is incantations, which is like poetry, which is like repetitive, telling someone that this thing is not wrong with you, get it out of your body, or you do what you have to do. And then again, incantations, when you look at traditional medicine, and you look at diviners, that is like, let me give you an example, an Ifa priest amongst the Yoruba people would actually use the two, incantations and the herbs. The two go together. But the incantations is not necessarily something bad or horrible. It's just to change the mindset and to lift the spirit of the person before you even start taking the herbs. And both, looking at both fall within different categories of intellectual property law. Now, looking at the herbal that you have all talked about, we look at patents. Like I said, patents, we have the Patents Act of 1970, which is older than I am, which should not be so. And at this point, the Patents Act, looking at herbal, traditional medicine, does not do the substantive, it only does the formal, which I think in a way is accommodating of traditional medicine. It is accommodating of traditional medicine because at this point in time, there are different categories. Jade mentioned the national and the international. We always forget the communal. There's this communal group of people who will likely, you find them in the village settings, not the elites like we all. You find them in the village settings, you find them in traditional communities. Daily, they cure people. We don't even interrogate them enough. We don't explore what they do enough. We don't even relate or interact with them enough. And they are so important to the development or sustainable development of traditional medicine. We can't leave them out. We can't leave them out. Whether we believe it or not, they're scientists as well. They do extract, maybe by a different means of production. They do the things scientists do as well. So I see them as scientists when it comes to the issue of traditional medicine. But would you say they know about the patents or the Patents Act, or does the Patents Act actually give recognition to them? I give credit to the Chinese. They have the Chinese patent medicine, which has to do with traditional medicine. But we have nothing really. we're still locked in the past with the Patents Act. We need to move forward, giving recognition to everyone, the communal, the national, and then we're strong to go to the international. It shouldn't be a top-down approach anymore. It should be a bottom-up approach. We start from where it started from, and then we move all the way up. When you look at protection, because I feel protection is really key to the development of traditional medicine knowledge. So that's looking at herbs. Again, I go back to divination and looking at incantation and divination. Divination, people see it as just people doing something that are so traditional that they do not understand what they're doing. But you have a whole lot of scholarly articles as well that says what they're doing has something to do with mathematics. It's the binary system. So that's science as well. It's a binary system. You have the Ifa priest having his Ifa tree, and on that, you have, even the tree itself is art, so it's protectable by copyright. And then the activities he does is science, so it's protectable by patents. If software applications and the rest can be protected by patents or copyright, why not what a diviner will do regarding healing, or regarding predictions of what could happen regarding someone, and so many other things. So in a way, we can't continue to try to fit traditional knowledge into the IP world as it is, because like Jade said, Africa or some of the Asian countries, traditional communities, were not even considered when these instruments were created. Like I said, it didn't start with the printing press. It started with rock art. That is the fix. And some others, you find some sculptures that tell stories. You find some carvings that tell stories, that tell you procedures of healing. That is how it started with us. We had our own way of fixing, but we also recognize the non-fixed as original stuff. And the irony of the situation is, and even till date, there were so many customary practices, and there's still so many customary practices that recognize individualism. I tell people, can 50 people create a sound or create music? They sleep, they wake up, and then they create it together. It sounds next to impossible. It usually starts with one, but for everybody. And that's what it is. One, but for every, so there's individualism within communalism. These kind of things are laws to recognize. And I think we need to capitalize on the fact that IP is territorial in nature. And we cannot be driven. We need to eradicate this superior, inferior thing that we have at the moment. Orthodox is superior, TM is inferior. There's no comparison. It shouldn't be compared. They're not two different things. They do the same thing. Well, so why the comparison? Why the comparison? One is traditional, one is orthodox. Right? They both heal, they both take care of people and stuff like that. So our intellectual property laws, as we have it now, are not recognizing enough these things within traditional knowledge, one of which is traditional medicine, which we can do from the bottom up. And then when we get international, we can now debate how it should be. And we can't leave the most important people out. And looking at geographical indications as well, Mrs. Edwards spoke about scent-leaf, GIs, geographical indications. We have trade secrets. Traditional medicine has a lot to do with trade secrets. We have so many areas of IP looking at traditional knowledge and traditional medicine knowledge. And this is what we should give recognition to and explore as much as we can. I won't speak for too long because of time, but I hope I've been able to share a bit of my ideas with you regarding methods of production in traditional medicine, which you can see in intellectual properties. But because of the framework of the law, it seems as if it can accommodate one if it has a Western feel and not accommodate the other because it has a traditional feel. And like I think somebody mentioned as well, Nigeria has 3 major languages, 250 ethnic groups, and bits and bits of differences in the languages we speak. We managed it for a long time, even before we were put together as Nigeria. We're still managing it. And we still look at, we're tripartite legal system, and there's so many things going on with us. or we've been able to manage, and I think it's about time we start managing traditional medicine knowledge. There's no way we can throw out the modern. So IP has come to stay. Traditional medicine is going nowhere. There should be a meeting of the two, not with one saying, you go and find a way whereby you have a bit of IP and a bit of this. No. Can we recognize TKTM in our legal framework when it comes to intellectual properties and other areas of law as well? Thank you so much. We can't hear you, Prof. You're muted, Prof.
Thank you for that. I was saying thank you so much, Professor Yemi, for your insights, which is not just challenging existing and established concepts and understanding of traditional knowledge, but opening up an entirely new horizon or methods on traditional medicine knowledge. In fact, rejecting conventional IP theory of traditional knowledge and proposing a new one. And I think that's something that that we should take away and a very important contribution of this webinar. Thank you so much, Prof. No less is expected anyway from you. So let's go to the questions. Like I was saying, we have so many questions, and the best way, in my view, to approach it is for me to read out these questions so that our panel can take down the questions that is of interest to them. And I'll go round, so they have just 2 minutes each to take to answer those questions. There are about 7 or 8 questions, and I will take them very slowly so that our experts can take them down, and I will just give them 2 minutes each to take each of those questions that is of interest to them. The first one is, what if the Westerners had shared the benefits with the proprietors of the traditional knowledge? Will there still be issues of biopiracy? Secondly, a follow-up question from the same person is with respect to the moral rights of attribution of the proprietors of traditional knowledge. So other than benefit sharing, are the Westerners obliged to attribute or disclose the active agent in their patent application, for example, which was derived as a result of traditional knowledge? Another question, since copyright is a colonial concept, what do you advocate in its stead? Will you prefer African creators to protect their creation? Another question, what can be done to preserve the good foods we have all over the world, as the problem is not the food, but the process of preservation? I think we're going to call Dr. Kemi, Mr. Tilayo, Mr. Jegede here, and of course, other experts can chip in. Another question, what is the position of intellectual property in protecting the knowledge of our traditional practitioners? Professor Yemi. Yes, and somebody was asking, I think this is directed at Professor Yemi. The question is, I learned from your presentation, I learned a lot. And she says, incarnations part of the mathematical binary system? Very interesting. Please explain more about that. So, I mean, that's very fascinating. And he says, are there too much of natural remedies? For example, plants or herbs, what we call in modern medicine overdose or abuse. Can we say can we take too much of that? So I think the questions are very clear, and some of them may have been covered in the course of the presentation, so the speaker can actually emphasize on those points, on those questions. I will go back to the queue, to the original queue. I hope our speakers are still there. Mr. Jegede, are you there? Can you quickly respond for 2 minutes to any of the questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. I am still here. So there was a question that will it do us good or will it cause harm? Too much of anything will definitely cause harm. Taking too much of water can cause harm because there are bioactive ingredients in some of these preparations. So anything you take in excess, your body, your liver cannot quickly digest, the body cannot use it, then it gets stored. So it's just like eating carbohydrate every now and then, or not taking something. So in a nutshell, taking too much of any preparation, any traditional medicine product is not good because the actually dosage form you're supposed to follow in use of some of these products. So don't take too much of it, even if it is sweet. Don't take it too much. Thank you very much.
Dr. Tomikogo?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just look at the questions and see. So I'll take the question that says, what can be done to preserve the good food we have all over the world, as the problem is not the food, but the processes or preservatives? Okay, so by good food, we mean going back to the natural food, not the processed foods, or even, like I said during my presentation, cutting down on animal proteins, because we realized that even some of these foods have been, okay, so take for instance, like I said, there's a documentary going on that Stanford University is putting together, and we realized that the so-called free-range eggs are actually not free-range. So they pack all of these chickens in one cage, and once one chicken has an infection, all others catch it. And what do? So that they can make a lot of money? They give them antibiotics so that these chickens can grow very fast, and then they can maximize what they will get from these chickens. And then we buy these chickens and we take in all of those antibiotics. Hence, there is a lot of infection, antibiotic resistant diseases. So they keep trying to get the right antibiotics that would work for some certain illnesses, and they can't. So yeah, it's not just about the preservative, but what are we using to grow this foods as well? So like I said, we need to go back to being original, being very original in everything we do. How are we rearing our animals? What are we feeding them with? What are they eating? You know, even the fish that we think is very healthy. From that documentary alone, I learned that they actually put in a lot of things in the ocean just to grow a lot of all the species. And when they checked what we call the wild caught salmon versus the farm ones, there were the farm ones were layered with a lot of fats, and we think, oh, salmon is healthy, I can be eating salmon every day. We're taking in fats. So the question is, it's not just about the preservative, but what are we feeding this animal? So let's go back to the original. Let's go back to how we used to eat things, how we used to rear chickens at the back, not while not attempting to make so much money, but to give life and give people quality life. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Titilayo Edet?
Thank you so much. For the plants especially, I believe if we dry them, we can fix them in their natural state. If we also freeze them, we can fix them in their natural state. An experiment that I've been doing with lemongrass. I also believe that wherever we stay, because things like lemongrass, scent leaf, you can actually plant, even if it's in a bucket, and then you can have it in your backyard. They grow very easily, and they don't need too much to grow. So for example, I have lemongrass in my backyard, and when I see that it's getting too much, I give it out, and it's still too much. I take them. Once I harvest, I dry. Once it is dry, I make into powder form. When it's in powder form, I put it in a container. So I use as my tea. Because if you look at even the imported tea bags that we have, they are in like net bags. The tea that we drink, they are in net bags. So that's a way of preserving them. So once it's dry in those bags, you just, when you want to use it, you put it in hot water. And so it's something that I've experimented myself. And I believe that this will help. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again for another prescription. Thank you so much, Ms. Edet. Ms. Jade Koletakis.
Yeah, hi. So some questions I'd like to answer is, the first one was about if the Westerners shared the benefits with traditional communities, would there still be issues of biopiracy? My answer to that would be yes. And the reason for that is multifold, but it hinges on the fact that benefit sharing is not the same thing as co-ownership. So if you're the owner of something, if you own this knowledge, you can decide what to do with it. So you can decide if you want to put it in boxes and sell it in the shops. You can decide if you want to sell it to people who want to lose some weight. You can decide if you want to exploit it or not. Whereas with benefit sharing, it's something taken after the fact. So it's allowing other people who are not part of these traditional communities to make a decision on exploiting commodities they don't actually have as their original source. Additionally, because you're not the owner, you don't have any say on the type of exploitation. You don't have any say with regards to the when and the where and all of those sorts of things. Additionally, there's nothing said in benefit sharing relationships about corresponding duties. So it's purely a sort of retrospective, paying money retrospectively to put right or wrong. It doesn't stop the wrong, which is exploiting the product you shouldn't be exploiting in the first place because you're not the owner of it. The next question I wanted to answer was the question about moral rights. And that's actually a really interesting question because there is a subgroup of academics who they do really interesting things in this space. And they make the argument that traditional knowledge should be protected as part of moral rights in the intellectual property space. And that's really interesting. It's something different. My problem with that is I don't think that's a very good solution because for many reasons. So the first thing is that moral rights are also premised upon this individualistic idea. So moral rights are held by an individual who traditionally has created something that they have a deep spiritual connection with, and it's part of their personhood. So we usually see moral rights applied to artworks, right? Because that's where you can sort of see this artsy connection between the spiritual and the physical. And it's premised on individuals. It's not premised upon communities creating these things. Additionally, moral rights include things like attribution and integrity, but again, they don't have any communal duties. They don't come with any duties when you exploit that particular commodity. As long as you just keep that commodity in its somewhat original form and you say it comes from these people, that's good enough. And also a problem with moral rights is that moral rights are very, very vague. There's not a lot of case law about moral rights. Moral rights are very much seen as sort of second class to economic rights. For example, moral rights deal with things like honor, and there isn't case law that tells us what honor means because people just don't sue over these moral rights. They sue over the economic ones. So trying to make moral rights fix the traditional knowledge problem, to me, is not a very good solution. I don't see that as being a very persuasive argument. And the last question that was asked was about if copyright is a colonial concept, then what should we have in its place? And my response to that is nothing, right? So my response to that is yes, right? The copyright framework is a colonial concept. but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad concept, right? So roads are a colonial concept, but we wouldn't say, oh, roads are terrible, let's get rid of roads, we don't want roads anymore, right? What makes it bad is that it's still a colonial concept. It might have been born of colonialism, right? But just because it's born of colonialism doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be inclusive and it can't include a myriad of different viewpoints and cultures and ethnicities and their ideas around ownership and rights. And that's the argument that I'm wanting to make, is that the copyright framework as it is today is very, very similar to how it was 100 years ago. And that's a problem, because we're not the same as we were 100 years ago. We have a whole new continent of people who deserve to be recognized within these frameworks. So my solution isn't to find an alternative, right? Again, we're not passing the buck. My solution is to do what you say on the tin, which is create a global intellectual property framework. And as we change as an international community and we realize equal rights and equal humanhood, so too should our laws change. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, for that issue. Dr. Lalude, any further comments for another 2 minutes?
He's muted. You're muted, Dr. Lalude.
Thank you. So, like I was saying, in incorporating the ecosystem, the advocacy for regulatory mechanisms, also so many times you see that these frameworks or these regulatory mechanisms could be part of when discussion about how incorporate of this fundamental aspect correct ensuring that the statement of
Thank you, Professor Ayoyemi.
Oh, okay. I guess the importance of TM has been shown by all of us, and that it's multidisciplinary. You have different areas of it. IP is key to it. Are we going to remain the same, or are we going to change things to be inclusive, like Jada said, and look at things in different ways? It's not just one way. It's not just Eurocentric or North American centered. You have African countries, you have Asian countries, you have many countries with a lot of ethnic groups, different people. You have communal levels. They're not gone, they're there. Communal levels are there. Customs are resilient, they're there. And all these things have something to do with the with traditional medicine knowledge and traditional knowledge generally. IP should be more accommodating. It should be not be a one cap fits all. It can't be. It's not possible. And until they become accommodating, like we said, we can't get rid of it. It came during the colonial times. We can't get rid of it, but it should recognize other knowledge systems and other traditional practitioners and different things that were not known years ago. It's about time there's a change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. We have come to the end of this webinar. I think we can pass a vote of confidence on our speakers. We want to thank them, every one of them, from Mr. Jegede to Ms. Titilayo Edet to Ms. Jade Kolitakis, from Dr. Lalide to Professor Yemi Lawal. We really want to thank you for contributing to this national, very important national debate. We also want to extend our appreciation to our participants, especially also our questionnaires from Dr. Intai to Peter Oladoshu, Bolaji Masahua, Ms. Jegede, Ms. Amosa, and the rest of them who have contributed in generating questions for discussion. Thank you so much on behalf of NNE Legal Consultants. I wish to thank you, and we come to the close of this particular edition. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.